Oftentimes, too many times in dentistry, we see people try to increase profitability in the practice before looking at potential growth opportunities. It really comes down to 3 KPIs that you can look at to increase profitability. The first number is what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another solo edition of the Dental Practice Launch podcast. I am your host, Shane Simmons, and today I am here a little bit under the weather, so if my voice sounds a little rusty here, it is not the speakers or your headphones or your car or wherever you may be listening to this, just battling a little cold or some allergies or something, as it's springtime here in the Indianapolis area, so lots of pollen and things like that. I'm sure many of you listening understand and know where I'm coming from. So, but I did want to, hop on here today and talk about something that I see a lot of questions around when it comes to new practice owners, and sometimes even practice owners who aren't new to the game, but never really quite figured this out. And that is, the 3 main KPIs you need to know when growing your dental practice with predictability. All right. So there's a lot of different KPIs or key performance indicators that you measure and you should be measuring in your practice. But if we're looking at it from a growth lens and kind of where you want to be, how many new patients you want to be seeing, what you want your production, collections to look like, then in my opinion, in my experience and years of helping dental practices grow, I've found 3 KPIs that a lot of practices don't know, or they think they know that they actually don't know accurately, and why those are important. So that's what we're going to hop into today. Before I get started, though, if you are listening to this and you haven't already, please, I beg, please sign up or subscribe, to the Dental Practice Launch podcast. It helps us out a ton, whether you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if you're on YouTube, we would love for you to subscribe to our channel. Really what we try to do with this is just bring valuable insights that we've learned over the years, and then also bring experts who are living this every single day to kind of share what's working to grow their dental practices. So subscribe, would love it if you did that. And without further ado, I think that's all the housekeeping notes here for today. Let's get right into this shorter version of the Dental Practice Launch podcast. But if you are looking to grow your practice and you are looking at numbers, right? What can I do to predict growth? Oftentimes, too many times in dentistry, we see people try to increase profitability in the practice before looking at potential growth opportunities. And it's not to say that you should always be grow and not looking at, making adjustments in your profitability. Like, certainly there's a time and place for that. But in dentistry specifically, it's just something about this industry. Most of the time, especially newer business owners, they go right into what can we cut, rather than looking at areas of growth and what they can look at to bring that growth predictably. So it really comes down to 3 KPIs that you can look at to go into growth mode to increase profitability without having to make cuts right away. The first number is your annual patient value. There's a number of different ways you can put this. Annual production per patient is another way to say it. But basically, it is, what is the average amount that your patients spend in your practice over a 12-month period? That is really helpful information. Now, if you're a startup, you don't have this information yet. So you've got to go, based off of maybe a 6-month period and then a 12-month period once you're open, or look at practices similar to yours, similar locations and insurance, not insurance, whatever the case is. But you got to figure out what that average number is. And really, that is going to be the key to everything when it comes to growth. Because if on average, just throwing a number out here based off some research that I've done, the average patient in your practice spends $1,200 over a 12-month period. That's some good information to know, because you can also look to see, is that number growing each year? Is that number going down each year? If it's going down, there may be some issues, there may be some treatment acceptance issues or planning issues. If it's going up, maybe that's a good thing. So it really just kind of depends. But knowing what your average patient spends in the practice is kind of like the guide to everything else that you're going to need from a growth standpoint, which brings us to our second KPI here, which is, what does it cost you to acquire a new patient? And this is different than a cost per conversion when it comes to the marketing world, because a conversion in the marketing world could be a phone call, right? Somebody called the practice from your ad or whatever the case is. And that's great. You should be measuring that. But ultimately, you got to figure out of however many conversions you get on an ad campaign, how many of those patients, what percentage on average, schedule and actually become new patients, right? So once you know what your average cost to acquire a new patient is, then you can start to kind of reverse engineer your growth. Now, we at Crimson Media have tracking in place that we've just rolled out, where we can actually see this. Certainly, we've done this for years, where we talk to the practice and really crunch some data to figure out what that number is. But now we have a dashboard where we can look at this exact number. But once you know that, then you can say, okay, well, if we need to add 5 more new patients a month from our marketing, then we can kind of reverse engineer it. So let's put this into a classic example here and think about why this can be so powerful for your practice. So using the information we talked about earlier, let's say $1,200 is what the average patient spends in your practice over a 1-year period. Let's say it cost you $200 to get a new patient in the door, right? Well, if it costs you $200 to get a new patient in the door, and the average new patient in your practice spends $1,200 annually, and that's just on the average, well, that should set you up for a pretty good return on your investment, somewhere in that 5 to 6 to 1 return at a minimum, right? And that's some handy information to know, because once you go from, oh my gosh, I'm spending $2,000 a month in ads, and you just see that $2,000 a month in ads, to, hey, I spend $2,000 a month in ads, but the average cost to get a new patient in the door is $200. So that $2,000 is bringing me on average somewhere around 10 new patients a month. And those 10 new patients on average bring my practice $1,200 a year. That's when you can start to say, well, that's a pretty darn good, investment that I'm making. And that's going to put you ahead of the majority of practice owners when you start to get that kind of data. And once you have that, then it's predictable. Hey, I want to hire an associate down the road. I know we need to hit X amount of new patients. We need to increase our budget based off of our cost per conversion to hit this new patient number. And then, that's going to lead to X amount of referrals, because that's another great KPI. That's kind of like a sub, KPI that you could add there, is how many referrals do you get per patient over a 12-month period. But that's where this compound effect really starts to go into motion. And that's really powerful stuff. So first KPI, you've got to know, what does the average patient spend in your practice in a 12-month period? Second KPI, you got to know, what does it actually cost you to get a new patient in the chair? Assuming the return makes sense there, you're going to be in great shape. And you also have to think about it in terms of, and this is another portion that I see a group of dentists fall into, is, well, their new patient appointment, they only spent $199 and I spent $200 to get them in the door. But yeah, that's their first patient appointment. But if these are the type of patients that ultimately should be marketing towards, which are going to become reoccurring patients in the practice, coming every 6 months for their cleaning, hygiene, at some point they're going to need work. Like, you need to be tracking that as well, because that's where you get that average annual spend per patient of $1,200 versus just looking at the first patient appointment. That's a very short-sighted way to look, and it's going to be very, very, very hard to grow and get ahead when you're just looking at what they spent on their first patient appointment. So that's key. The third and final KPI when it comes to knowing this data is, what is your average new patient booking time. So what I mean by that is, how long are you booked out to get a new patient in the door? Now, obviously there's hygiene patients. There are emergency type patients that may fall on the doctor's schedule. Maybe you are doing hygiene currently. You need to know that as well, and need to have a system in place to be able to schedule patients who are wanting to be new patients in the practice within a minimum 2-week period, ideally within a week period, to get new patients in the door. And those are like marketing type patients. Now, if you're getting a referral, they'll wait months many times to see you, right? Because they've been referred to you. But if we're talking about we're spending money to get patients to call our practice, then we need to make sure that we can actually get them in and get them seen. Otherwise, they're going to call around and find somewhere where they can be seen. And this is an area where a lot of practices are flying blind a little bit, because many times their front desk will just say, hey, our first new patient appointment's 4 months down the road. And then that patient, we hear it all the time, that patient will say, all right, well, thanks, I'm gonna call around. Okay, thanks, bye. And they hang up. Like there should have been an opportunity there to be like, well, hey, we can at least get you on this wait list if something opens up in the next week or 2 weeks, or if you have block scheduling set up, which you should, making sure you make room to get those new patients in the door. So that's why you need to be monitoring your front desk, your calls, to see, are they getting people in? Are they actively trying to get people scheduled, fit in, that are new patients? Or are they just kind of letting them call and, hey, here's the next appointment, and that's that. And if that's what's happening, which again, it's happening in the majority of practices, we monitor these calls with, then you're going to have a really hard time growing, because it doesn't matter how much you spend in marketing at that point. If the front desk can't get the patient in the door because you're booked out too far, or they're not, you're not utilizing block scheduling or something of those sorts, then it doesn't matter, right? You're not going to convert those patients. Patients aren't going to wait 2, 3, 4 months in most cases. Some will, but that's the minority of patients. So in summary, when you're wanting to grow, you need to know your average cost per new patient in the practice. You need to know what the average patient spends in your practice over a 12-month period. And you need to know what the average kind of lead time is when you're booking patients out. If you know these numbers and you have the data, like what we track here at Crimson Media, then it makes growing way less stressful, way more predictable. And knowing your numbers, well, then you'll start to think like a CEO, like a business owner, where you say, well, every time we spend this amount, we know on average we're going to get X amount back. And that's the way to think, versus here's just X amount we're spending just to spend it. So I hope that this was helpful. Hopefully this will save you a lot of headaches, in the future. And if you have questions or looking for a dental marketing partner, we at Crimson Media are here to help dental practices grow through proven online marketing that we track, that we make sure that we get you this kind of data so that you know how much your patients are spending, how much it costs to acquire a new patient, and how much those patients are producing for the practice. So please like, subscribe this video, subscribe to the podcast. Would love that. I'm about to lose my voice. So until next time, Shane Simmons signing off here from the Dental Practice Launch podcast.